Sorry, I cut you off there.
No, you're fine.
One of the great things about the corpora is that they're language and context. So we're looking at is how people actually use language rather than someone's interpretation of how people use language. And so you can observe language in its natural state. And as a lawyer, one of the things we're trying to figure out is, as we try to figure out what words mean, we want to know how people actually use the words. And so it lowers one of the barriers to finding that out, rather than just using our own intuitions, or rather than using a dictionary, which isn't intuitive at all, but is someone's interpretation of how people use language. We can use the corpora to make observations about how language is used in nature. So, for example, the corpora have a lot of spoken language in them, at least the corpus of contemporary American English. And so we can observe how people use this language when they're speaking in unscripted ways on television shows. And that's helpful to us to know the context in which language is used, because it gives us a fuller flavor of the meaning of words.
I like it. Okay, and again, some of the ways that your colleagues have used this in some pretty big court decisions, if you want to share a little bit of info on that just briefly.
So we've had only a few court decisions in which courts have used corpora to try to make the decisions. One of the most famous was a decision by Judge Posner from Chicago, in which he was trying to interpret the word harboring from a federal statute. And the case involved a woman who was in a romantic relationship with an illegal alien, and the question was whether she was harboring this person in her home. And Judge Posner looked at, in this case, he didn't look at the corpora, but he looked at Google to figure out what does harboring mean. And so what he was trying to figure out was, how do people understand this word, because it was used in a statute. And what he decided was that harboring was a word that was typically used when you're trying to hide someone from someone else. And in this case, she wasn't trying to do that. And so she wasn't in violation of the statute because she wasn't harboring. So it's these sorts of statutory interpretation questions that are quite common. Some of my other colleagues want to use the corpora to develop a better understanding of the Constitution. So there are many words in the Constitution that have particular meanings. So, for example, due process. And what does that word, what do those words mean now, as opposed to in the late 1800s, as opposed to in the late 1700s? And we can use the corpora to try to get some more perspectives on that.
Okay. And maybe a little more, I'm curious to know a little more about, you said you wrote a book, was it, with this colleague, or a couple of papers?
Paper, yeah.
A paper, okay. And what was the paper focused on?
So it seems like a frivolous question. In fact, I had just, I was inspired by a question by a student who asked, what's the difference between a shareholder and a stockholder? And the conventional wisdom is that those are synonyms. And one of the things that we learned from corpus linguistics is that words aren't truly synonyms, or aren't perfect synonyms, but are near synonyms for each other. So even though we use shareholder and stockholder in many of the same contexts, we also use them in different contexts. And when we see the words in different contexts, we see shades of meaning that would be impossible for us to pick up just by reading judicial opinions or articles or studies, because most people assume today that those words are synonyms, but it turns out we use them in slightly different ways to connote slightly different types of corporations.
Interesting. So there's no true synonyms.
Yeah, they actually use the word near synonym in this field, because what they use, you probably picked this up from talking to Mark, but they use a method called collocation, in which they try to determine what words appear near other words. And if you do a collocation of shareholder and then a collocation of stockholder, you'll see that the words that appear near those words differ. which suggests that they're being used in different semantic contexts. That is, they're being used with slightly different connotations. So even though you might ask an expert in corporate law if there's any difference and the expert would deny it, people in their common language actually use these to mean slightly different things.
Okay. Now I'd like to hear, kind of gathering some of the things you've said, being in the law field and having written a paper and finding out that, you know, there are only near synonyms. If you can kind of bring that all together and how, you know, in just this one bit of life, which is law,
Yeah.
the corpus linguistic plays a huge role.
Okay. I don't know what's
And it's a way to give background to the audience. That,
Right.
okay, oh, this is a law expert, and this is someone who's written a paper, and he's saying corpus linguistics plays a big role
Okay.
in this field.
Practicing lawyers use interpretive tools to understand constitutions, legislation, regulation, judicial opinions, and we have a fairly limited range of interpretive tools that have traditionally been available to us. We look at the context in which the words are used, we try to understand their common meaning, and we try to understand their technical meaning. Corpus linguistics is another tool that has so far not been widely used, but I think will revolutionize the study of law because it will add new perspectives on the interpretation of words in all of those settings. In addition, legal scholars will use corpus linguistics to gain additional insight into the study of law. And so I think corpus linguistics is going to completely change both the practice of law and legal scholarship.
Awesome.
Okay.
That was perfect. I don't know that we need much more said. Is there anything you want? I mean, this is going to be shown to people that have no idea what a corpus or corpora are. And
Okay.
Is there anything
But I'm not
you
the
want
only
to say?
one who's going to be telling them, right?
Yeah, you're not.
Okay.
But I give everyone the chance to kind of say what fascinates them, because the only way that our audience is going to be interested in watching this is by hearing what other people light up about.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting to hear everybody in their different practices, how they use it, but more so what they find most intriguing about it, you know.
So one of the things I love about the corpora is that they're really no harder to use than a Google search. If you just sit down at your computer, type in a word, you get immediate results. And for a scholar, having immediate results is exciting because you can look through a list of results and say, I see things there that I've never seen before. And the results come instantaneously. And you can tweak the searches to get different perspectives on whatever your topic is. So for example, Mark and I just recently, I'll just tell a story, maybe something good will come out of this. But,
Okay.
Mark and I were talking about the concept of loyalty. And he has a new corpus called the soap opera corpus, in which he compiled transcripts from soap operas, and they're not called transcripts. What are they called? Scripts. They're just scripts. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Mark has a new corpus called the soap opera corpus, in which he's compiled scripts from soap operas, and we searched the word loyalty. And one of the things that we're trying to understand is how people understand the meaning of loyalty in their everyday lives, because the duty of loyalty is an attempt to emulate that loyalty that people feel in their everyday lives. And what we saw when we looked at the soap opera scripts was that loyalty often had to do with serving other people, and that disloyalty came when other people felt betrayed. And this was a way in which we add color to the interpretation of loyalty in the legal context. If we want someone to behave in a loyal fashion, We want them to be serving other people. We want them to be outward-looking, not self-centered. That didn't come off as well as I want. Don't use that part.
That's interesting, though. I like hearing things like that. It's really an interesting thing. I don't think we have anything more to say. I think everything
Okay.
you said has really captured quite a bit.
Okay.
I'm gonna do an end clap. Oh, are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I changed video clip halfway through.